Hi, this is Chris from Rethink Math Teacher. Thank you for enrolling in our 21-day challenge to be a better math teacher. We're going to be working through some things together that's going to help you with your instructional design, your classroom management, and your learning environment so that you can improve your mathematical instruction and get more learning from your students. So today's day one, and what we're going to focus on is starting class right. When you start the class right, the period or the day, you're going to set the proper tone for the entire time that you're with your students. So there's a fantastic book called The First Days of School by Dr. Wong, and in that book he introduced us to this concept of when the students enter the room, they go directly to their seat and they immediately begin working on problems that are on the board. He called this the do now or the bell ringer. And it's a very good strategy, and that's what we're going to be using. So you're going to have to think through a couple things, but the goal is when the students enter the room, they immediately go to their seat and start working on the do now. I've sat in a lot of teachers' classrooms, and I have seen them take 5 to 10 minutes every period for the students to enter the room, sit down, and then for the teacher to actually begin doing some type of learning activity, whether it be practice problems or a lesson or whatever. 5 to 10 minutes every day adds up very fast. And if you think about your best practices, we learn math by doing it, by doing practice problems and then learning from our mistakes or from our correct answers. If we're losing 30 minutes to an hour every week, there's a lot of math practice that could be going on in that time. And so we're really hurting the amount of time our students are spending wrestling with the material or engaging in the learning, and we're really hurting ourselves. Our students could learn a lot more if we used our time better. So we're going to be thinking about a few things so that we can get class started immediately and we can get back those 30 minutes to an hour. So you're going to do a couple things. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to have a seating chart. You're going to make it so that you can put it on the board, and you're going to teach your students where they sit. And of course, that's going to take a couple days for them to remember their seat and sit there right away, but that's going to be important, and we'll come back to why. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to think about what you want your students to have every day when they enter your room, what you want them to take out so that they can begin their class. And you're going to teach this to your students as well. So for me, it was their folder, a sheet of paper, and a pencil. They didn't need a math book because they were always in the classroom and I just handed them or passed them out. So I just wanted my students to have those three things. For you, obviously, it could be different, but think through exactly what you want them to have and then teach that to them. The next thing you're going to have to do is develop the questions that you're going to put on the board for your do now or your bell ringer. For me, I would always do a few questions. I would have a couple that were part of my spiral review, so we were going over skills that we had already learned, so because I didn't want them to lose that knowledge. I would do at least one problem that was an end of course assessment type question so that they were getting exposed to that type of rigor and those question types and seeing the test design on those type of questions. And we did that every day. And then I tried to make my last question for the do now something that transitioned easily to the whole group lesson. So once you've got that done, you're going to think through how you want or how you're going to encourage your students to do what you want them to do. You want them to enter the room quietly, go straight to their seat, take out their stuff, and begin working on their do now. Obviously, your students have other things that they might want to do, like go visit a neighbor or go talk to somebody or just sit there and stare out the window. So how are you going to encourage them to do what you expect? I did a couple things, and Dr. Wong recommends one. He says that when the students enter the room, if they don't go to their seat and do what they're supposed to do, he asks them to leave and try again. And that's something I've done and I've found effective. Obviously, some of your students, it doesn't work as well as you'd like it for them and they need a little more pressure. So I've started giving them tardies when it becomes an ongoing problem. Of course, I've got the parents involved and escalated the consequences until they started doing what they were supposed to do. Another thing I do is I walk around the room with a marker and I start putting extra credit on the papers of the students who did what they were supposed to do. And of course, once the other students see me giving the extra credit, they want that, so they at least go through the motions to make it look like they're doing what I want them to do. So think through how you're going to encourage them to do the right thing, what the class expectations are, and what you're going to do when they're not doing that. You're also going to, once the students have entered the room and begun to do now, what are you going to do? Well, we know you need to take roll, and what I want you to do is take roll silently, because you want your students engaged in the questions and thinking through them and working on them, and you don't want to break their concentration so that they have to answer or try and tell you where Johnny is because he's not in the room but he's at the clinic or wherever else he is. And you just don't want all the nonsense that goes around when you're taking roll out loud. So you're actually going to take roll quietly just by checking the seating chart, and then you're going to double check by doing a head count. You also probably have some other administrative tasks you're supposed to do, maybe return work or collect things or whatever. And you're going to do that quickly while the students are working on the do now. And then your goal is to get around the room, check everybody, see that they're doing the work, spot check some of the problems that they're doing so you can give them some feedback. You also need to think through how long the students should have on the do now. Remember, our goal here is to maximize our time. So you don't want to give them too long, but you do want to give them enough time to actually wrestle with the material. Now, when that time is done, I go over the do now right then and there. Sometimes I go over all the questions, sometimes I go over most of the questions, but I do think that there's a lot of value in giving students immediate feedback, and I place that as a priority in my class. So that's why I'm going over them right away. You're also going to want to think through the collection process. I've seen some teachers collect the do nows every day. Usually these are teachers who aren't going over the do now, so they collect it so they can grade it and return it quickly, because that's how they're trying to give that immediate feedback by doing it the next day. I usually give my students all week, and then I collect it at the end of the week, because collecting papers and then returning them is often a time-consuming endeavor. And so I try and minimize that. Now, when you're giving students work every day for 5 days, of course, one, they're gonna lose their papers, and two, the tracking and organization gets difficult. So to help counter that, I created a worksheet with boxes for them to do their work in, and then answer section on the side so they can just write the answer. Of course, you have to teach them how to use that, but that is a free download on our website, and I'll link to that so that you can use that if that's something that you're interested in. For me, it really helped, and I like giving my students all week. The other trick I do is, as I'm circulating the room checking everybody, I mark whether they're right or if there's something the students need to fix. That way, when I'm grading it, I can just see, oh, look, everything's right, and just this one problem I'm checking, yeah, he fixed it, so he got that right. And that makes the grading process a lot easier. Finally, after you've done the do now, you want to transition immediately into the next activity. For me, it was always whole group instruction, and then we did our learning stations. For you, obviously, it could be different, but you want to transition seamlessly and quickly into the next thing, because we're trying to maximize our minutes, not lose a lot of time. That's why I made my last question usually a transition question that got them thinking about what I was trying to teach, or got them working on what I was going to be teaching them, and we just springboarded off of that. So that is the day one challenge. You're gonna think through how you start your class. You're gonna develop these procedures and a seating chart so that your students enter the room quickly, quietly, and immediately begin working. There's some more resources that you're gonna get for this day one activity, and I'll see you in the next day.